Well, it's hard not to bounce out of bed this morning because when you look at the schedule for what is coming up for Thursday night hoops, not one, but two games, and both of them mean a lot for all four teams involved. I'm Jack Heverin, Thursday morning's edition of NBL Now, alongside Derek Rucker. Ruck, this is going to be one hell of a round, and this is one hell of a way to start it.
It is. Love a Thursday night doubleheader, Jack. And, the New Zealand Breakers, I think we'll find out what they're really made of tonight. They've got some injuries, but yet they're 3-1, and I have them well ahead of where anybody could have forecasted them to be. And, of course, Southeast Melbourne, the feel-good story of round 5, is it real or was it just a sugar hit?
Why don't we stay there then, in that case? We weren't going to get to the games until a little bit later on, but you're on a roll, and I don't want to stop you when you're on a roll. New Zealand, no Mojave King. He's going to miss a couple of weeks with a calf injury, and Mitch McCarron is going to miss somewhere around the 4 to 5 week mark with a knee injury, which is great for Mitch. The early reports were that it was a lot worse, but the Breakers seem like they've got enough pieces that they should be able to cover that. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think so. And the thing that I like about them, Jack, and I've said this to you in private conversations, is they have two really good guards that can make plays and win games. And those guys are only going to get better playing alongside of each other the longer the season goes. And it is a bad break that they're going to lose King and McCarron, because I felt those two guys kind of were fitting in nicely. There was not a lot of pressure on them, and they were finding their way in the lineup. Mojave King's been shooting the ball really well, and I think Mitch McCarron is comfortable in that utility guard position where he can read the game and do whatever he feels is necessary. But without those two, I still think they're capable enough. They're better up front, potentially, than they're showing right now. Jonah Bolton and Sam Menenga, they'll lift their games. Freddie Gillespie, I think you kind of have a soft spot for Gillespie just because he plays hard. He's exciting, and he's a little bit unpredictable, Jack. He's a bit of a lightning rod. We don't know what we're going to get from him from game to game.
Freddie, my man, try and stay out of foul trouble if you can, because when he's out on the court, Ruck, I mean, Will Magnay's unequivocally the best rim protector in the competition. There's no arguing that. But I think we're going to start to see more and more. We saw a bit of it against Perth on the weekend of Freddie Gillespie's ability to be that last line defender and protect the rim.
Well, we remember a couple of seasons ago when they had Derek Pardon. He was an outstanding rim protector. Now, I think he was probably more skilled on the offensive end than Gillespie is, but I don't think Pardon had the pieces like Bolden and Menenga in terms of local players to provide the support. So I don't think Gillespie really needs to do much on the offensive end. There, all he's got to do is offensive rebound and dunk.
I think in some respects, Gillespie might only be as good as what Bolden and Menenga are, because if they're carrying their load offensively, then Gillespie can do his thing defensively. To Southeast Melbourne, when Derek Walton Jr. went down in midway through the third quarter of that game, and we've now learned that he's going to miss somewhere between 3 and 4 weeks with a grade 1 hamstring issue, Sam McKinnon turned to Angus Glover. He didn't turn to Ben Ayre. He didn't turn to Owen Foxwell. He turned to Angus Glover, and Angus Glover responded with 7 assists and really ran the point well in that second half. So is that their starting point guard for the next couple of weeks, Angus Glover?
This is a tough one. I think I would keep him up my sleeve in the game. I think I would go ahead and start Foxwell. Give him a chance, see what he can do, build a little bit of confidence. You know, Jack, I'm a big fan of development. Well, right now is some early season development for Owen Foxwell. Let's see what he's made of and see if he can get out there and lead this team. Now, he doesn't need to do it for long stretches of time, Jack. All I need is a good 12 to 15 minutes of solid point guard play, because I've still got Ayre. I've still got Sobey, who I can run a little bit at the point. And, of course, as you mentioned, Angus Glover can do a lot of different things, and he's shown that he can be a capable point guard in the interim. But I'm really excited to see what Southeast Melbourne bring, and if Sam McKinnon continues to be able to lead this team effectively. And also, what's the coaching mix like? I think Josh King is due in any minute from overseas. So I'm really curious to see how that all pans out tonight.
Yeah, so you said this off the top. How do they make sure that it's not a sugar hit? Because in many ways, they had nothing to lose last Sunday, whereas now that feels like that was a one-game pass.
expectations are something else, Jack, right? And that's the tough part about being successful. You got to hit it and hit it and hit it every week. And I think this is a good matchup for Southeast Melbourne because of the way Hurt is playing. And I think Hurt could pose some problems because he is a professional scorer. And we just sang Gillespie's praises on the defensive end, but he's going to require a lot of discipline to play against Hurt. And I think overall, Southeast Melbourne, optimism, one victory, and confidence, it all can come together and lead to a second straight win. It wouldn't surprise me at all.
Matt Hurt's Huddle edition with Pete Hooley is now sitting up on the NBL podcast and, of course, NBL.com.au. Check it out. He's a really interesting guy. He's got a really interesting backstory. Just on Southeast Melbourne, thought this was worth sharing with the NBL Now family this morning. Mick Randall from News Corp has reported that Jordi Hunter has gone back to Southeast Melbourne and renegotiated his contract and taken out the Asia clauses. Now, we think about in the lead up to this season, Ruck, that was a big topic. Would Southeast Melbourne actually get Jordi Hunter or would he go and explore overseas? We now know our answer. And if you're a Phoenix fan, you know that you're going to have Jordi Hunter as your starting centre for 3 seasons.
And if you're a fan of the NBL, Jack, I think it's the same because Jordi Hunter is an exciting big man. And we saw when he's confident and he feels like he's involved in the team structure against Melbourne, he was really good. He looked athletic again. And we are hurting for good Australian bigs in the league. So if you have one, go ahead and lock him up. We saw Brisbane do a similar thing with Tyrell Harrison. But for Hunter to give up that Asia out clause means that he believes in what the Phoenix have going on there. And good for him. As you said, he renegotiated, and there's no better time to renegotiate after you drop 20 in an upset victory over your crosstown rivals. Perfect business since Jordi Hunter.
It's a really good time to negotiate on the back of what we saw last Sunday, no doubt about that. Melbourne and Illawarra, Ruck, there's, I don't think you have to stretch the imagination too far to picture this being another semi-final matchup like it was last season, or potentially somewhere down the line, who knows, even being a championship matchup.
These are really good teams, Jack, and I'm headed down to Illawarra in about an hour. I'll be covering the game with Brad Rosen and Matt Russell, and these are two really good defensive teams, but yet Illawarra are working at a record rate on the offensive end. They've got a lot of guys. I was really impressed with how Tyler Harvey spoke on yesterday's version of NBL Now, where he talked about his team and how he sees himself fitting in, and Justin Tatum's philosophy and his value system. Jack, you see it all the time in AFL when teams just come together and they look powerful. And I'm getting a similar vibe from Illawarra. Look, my antenna was up. I was like, was last season a fluke, or can they really build upon it? And it looks like last season was no fluke at all.
Can I be honest, Ruck? I saw something at Hoops Fest in round 1, which you're just talking about. I thought of all of the games that we did and all of the teams I saw in round 1, that team looked the most locked in. And that team, whenever we take a time out in the broadcast, you watch the eyes, Ruck, they're all looking at Justin Tatum. They're listening to every word he's saying. Yeah. Something's really happening here, don't you think?
It is. And when they win these games, there's a professional response about it. You see some teams that are elated and they act a certain way, and that's all well and good. But I like when teams act like, hey, this was supposed to happen. We were supposed to come up here and beat you. When you come into our house, we're supposed to beat you. And also, I liked how they responded off of the loss to Adelaide. That was a moment where they could have been checked. And they've come back strong. And right now, I think they are the best team in the league. I don't think it's clear cut. I think them, Melbourne, and Sydney are really probably the best teams, with Adelaide trying to make some noise. But after that, Jack, I think there are a lot of other teams fighting to compete with those teams. And if you want to compete with those teams, you got to figure out a way to foil them.
So just one on that. Last Sunday, Jordi Hunter, who we spoke about, did a real number on Rob Lowe and Marcus Lee together. One man beat two men. Those two men have got Sam Froling tonight. How important is that matchup going to be from a Melbourne standpoint? Because we know what Sam Froling is going to bring.
Well, it's interesting, Jack. Who was a more formidable front line that Froling had to play against? Haporti and JLA or Lee and Lowe? I would say the former. And Froling torched them last year in the postseason. So I think Lowe and Lee have their hands full. Now, Lee, with his angular defensive positioning, provides a good challenge for Froling because Froling's really awkward. He's left-handed. This is going to be a fascinating matchup, and it's a great point you raised. But I think Froling right now, within that team structure and the way they play, I think he's so comfortable, Jack. He doesn't feel rushed, and I think he knows he's going to get enough touches. He's going to get enough usage to have an impact game to game. I just don't see the variance in his performances that we saw 3 years ago. He's a really consistent player now.
Let's talk about Tasmania. A little bit of news going on at the moment. They're sticking fat with Craig Sword. There was a little bit of discussion, and when we did Moments That Matter earlier in the week, we pondered what that might look like now that Jack McVeigh doesn't seem as though he's coming home anytime soon. Tasmania have been pretty defiant that he's not going anywhere.
Well, full credit to them. And they believe in their process. They believe in their system that is going to get them through. And look, Craig Sword, to his defense, he has been very efficient. He's shooting the ball decent. All his advanced metrics do not look bad. The problem is he's got low productivity. He's only averaging 5.5 points a game. One game, Scott Roth didn't play him against Sydney, brought him in late. He apologized for that one, and then he brought him in another game where I thought he may have played him too much. And then the last game he played, well, Sword was just okay. So I'm not sure where he fits into this Jack Jumpers lineup. But they need points, Jack. And I don't know where they get scoring from.
That's the worry. Because now we know what they've got, right? They're not, if they're not making a change, they've got to find points with the team that they've got. And to me, that seems a little easier said than done.
Okay, so they're last in the league pretty much in rebounding. So they're not getting second chance opportunities on the offensive glass. They're last in the league in field goal percentage. Okay? They're also not creating turnovers on the defensive end. They're not getting out in transition and being able to create easy opportunities. And Scott Roth's team's been built on the back of defense, and I think that's where it's got to start. Basketball is such a two-way street. They've got to lock in, create turnovers, rebound the ball better, and create easier opportunities because they're a highly inefficient scoring team, and I think that's a manner in which they can improve their scoring.
One to throw at you from the Brisbane Bullets perspective, Sam McDaniel out for the season, so they've got a little bit of wriggle room, certainly long term, so they've got a little bit of wriggle room there. Maybe a little whisper or two that potentially Emmett Naar is someone that they could be entertaining the thought of bringing in. What do you think about that?
Well, I did some research before the pod this morning, and I was shocked to see Emmett Naar is 30 years old.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was really enlightening. So he's a veteran guard. Let's not sugarcoat it. And I think one of the concerns with the Bullets is Mitch Norton. He's having to log so many minutes, and I think he's probably having a lot more to do than was anticipated coming into the season. We see him sustaining niggling injuries, and I think Emmett Naar may be a smart decision just to be there in case Norton breaks down. And I'm thinking also that James Bateman seems to operate right now better off of the basketball. And they need him doing what he's done the past two games to have a chance of winning these games. So Emmett Naar will be an interesting signing. The other thing I might do, Jack, I might be in the market for a 3 or 4 just in case Deng Adel doesn't come through physically or with his performances.
Have you got some doubts there?
I do. And I'm not trying to be rude, but I just think I'm looking at track record, and the last time he was in the NBL, he kind of plotted a similar course where he was looking good and then it kind of faded away. Look, I hope for his sake that he can find He can find his mojo on court, but right now, carrying injury, this is not when you want to get injured. When you're just getting back into the league, you had a solid preseason. Now your momentum and your continuity is totally disrupted. And it takes a special type of player and athlete to be able to bounce back and find his rhythm again and be productive.
I want one-word answers and one-word answers only to finish off this morning. New Zealand or Southeast Melbourne?
Southeast Melbourne. That's 3 words.
Yeah, I know. I didn't think that through very well, did I? That's 3 words.
I guess.
Melbourne or Illawarra?
Illawarra.
This is going to be an awesome night of hoops. You're going to be in Illawarra. The first game's up at Wolfbrook Arena in Christchurch. The Breakers taking their game on the road, which is great to see as well. Brilliant night for hoops. Ruck, have a safe flight, and we'll see you tonight on ESPN.
I will, and enjoy the round, Jack.
Thanks very much for being with us, everyone. We will break it all down tomorrow.